Welcome, all brothers and sisters in Christ, to Soulful Scriptures every day.
It is so wonderful to be with all of you again.
It really is. And today we are looking at something that is just, well, it's heavy.
Yeah, it's a very heavy topic today.
Imagine looking at a video of your child.
Right.
They're laughing, they seem completely fine, and then just a few hours later, they are gone.
It's an absolute waking nightmare. Unimaginable.
Completely unimaginable. And today we are exploring a mother's waking nightmare, and really this unyielding digital fortress that is keeping her from the truth about her son's final hours.
We're drawing from a deeply urgent BBC article for this.
Yes, exactly. It was written by Steve Knibbs and Harriet Robinson, and they just did incredible work bringing this to light.
They really did. It's such an important piece of reporting.
It is. And the mission of our deep dive today is to walk alongside this grieving mother. Her name is Ellen Room.
And we really want to explore the tragic passing of her 14-year-old son.
Right, and her desperate search for answers that are, currently just locked away behind social media algorithms.
Which is something I think a lot of parents haven't even considered.
No, absolutely not. And ultimately, we want to talk about what this means for you, for your families, and for the way we shepherd our children in this increasingly opaque digital age.
Because it's really about what happens when the truth you need to find peace is trapped inside a smartphone.
Yeah, and the multinational corporations holding the keys they refuse to hand them over.
Yeah, just say no. It's staggering.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start in Cheltenham with Ellen and her son, Jools Sweeney.
Right. So the events documented by the BBC, they took place back in April of 2022.
Right.
And Ellen found Jools unconscious in his room. He subsequently passed away.
Which is just, it's every parent's absolute worst fear realized.
It is. And what makes this specific tragedy so difficult to process, and really what drives the entirety of Ellen's current battle, is the contrast.
The contrast between how he was acting before and what happened.
Exactly. It's this stark, jarring contrast between his final known moments and the discovery in his bedroom.
Yeah, the article highlights a really specific, chilling piece of evidence about that.
The doorbell camera.
Yes, exactly. Jools was captured on the family's doorbell camera just hours before he died.
Just hours. That's the part that is so hard to wrap your mind around.
And he was laughing. He was, according to his mother, absolutely fine.
Right. There were no outward signs of distress.
None. No warnings, no behavioral shifts. I mean, nothing that would prepare a parent for what was to come.
And that is the detail that really anchors this entire conversation, I think.
Because as a parent, your whole life is built around reading your children, right?
Okay, absolutely. You're always watching them.
You look for the micro-expressions, the shifts in tone. You look for those subtle indicators that something is wrong.
But when the physical evidence, like a doorbell camera video, shows joy, and the immediate outcome is death, the human brain simply cannot reconcile the two.
It just can't. It creates this massive vacuum of understanding.
And what is really staggering here is that the official systems, the legal and medical systems designed to provide answers, they essentially hit a wall alongside the family.
Yeah, that was shocking to read. Following the inquest into Jools' death, the coroner delivered what they call a narrative verdict.
Right. We need to examine exactly what a narrative verdict is.
Because that's kind of confusing, isn't it? It sounds like they just tell a story.
Well, yeah, and it is the legal mechanism that leaves Ellen in such an agonizing position right now.
Okay, so break that down for us. What does it actually mean?
So, in the British coronial system, an inquest is not a criminal trial. It's really just a fact-finding inquiry.
Okay.
The coroner's job is to establish who the deceased was and how, when, and where they came by their death.
Just the basic facts, the mechanics of it.
Right. And historically, coroners relied heavily on short-form verdicts. Things like natural causes, accidental death, or suicide.
But human tragedies often resist those neat little categories, right?
Exactly. They don't always fit into a clean box. So a narrative verdict was developed to allow the coroner to write a brief, factual statement.
A statement describing the circumstances of the death.
Yeah, exactly. They use it when the evidence doesn't cleanly fit into one of those traditional boxes we just mentioned.
So it's essentially the legal system saying, here are the mechanics of what happened, but we don't have enough proof to assign a definitive category to it.
Precisely. And the standard of proof is crucial here.
How so?
Well, to return a conclusion of suicide in the UK, a coroner must be satisfied that the deceased not only undertook the act that caused their death, but that they specifically intended to end their own life.
Oh, wow. So intent is the absolute key there.
It is. And in Jools' case, the coroner explicitly stated that it was, quote, unlikely he intended to take his own life.
Unlikely. So they looked at everything and said, no, he didn't mean to do this.
Right. The coroner looked at the evidence, which presumably included that doorbell footage of him laughing, and concluded that the intent to die was simply not there.
I want to introduce a way to visualize this for everyone listening because it's just so devastating.
Yeah, it's hard to grasp without a visual, I think.
Imagine you are handed a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and the image on the box is your child's life.
That's a great analogy.
You've spent 14 years carefully putting this puzzle together. You have the edges clearly defined.
You know their habits, their friends.
Right. You have the bright, vibrant corners. You even have that beautiful, clear image from the doorbell camera forming the pieces right near the end.
But then right in the dead center.
Yes, right in the dead center of the puzzle, where the final, most crucial pieces that explain the whole picture should be, there is just a hole.
There's nothing there.
Nothing. You can see the outline of the tragedy. The coroner has given you the borders of the medical event.
But the core picture of his final moments, the actual reason why he is gone, is completely missing.
Exactly. How does a parent even begin to process a tragedy that lacks a definitive cause?
Especially when they know, with absolute certainty, that the missing pieces to that puzzle might exist in a device sitting right in front of them.
Yes, his phone was right there.
And they don't process it. The grief cannot metabolize because the causality is missing.
You just stay stuck in that loop of asking why.
And this is where the physical absence of answers in that bedroom drives Ellen into the digital realm.
Because where else are you going to look?
Right. Because if the physical world, his demeanor, his actions in the house, the medical examination, if that cannot provide the why, she is logically forced to look at the environment where he spent a significant portion of his time.
Which is the online ecosystem.
Exactly, the digital world.
And the BBC article is very clear about Ellen's suspicions here. She is not just grasping at straws.
No, not at all. She has a very specific theory.
Yeah, a terrifying theory based on her son's actual behavioral patterns. She noted that Jools was, quote, into every single challenge possible.
Which is, sadly, very common for a 14-year-old boy.
Right, so she fears that he engaged in an online challenge that went wrong, or perhaps that he was communicating with someone inappropriate.
And she said something so heartbreaking in the article. She said, the loss of a child is impossibly hard, and the loss of a child with no answers is horrific.
It just breaks your heart. So she turns to the one place those answers would live. She turns to the social media companies.
And she hits a brick wall, a massive legal brick wall.
Yeah, they just shut her down. The platforms are flatly refusing to release Jools' data without a court order.
What's fascinating here is the collision between natural human morality and the rigid mechanical architecture of digital privacy law.
Right, because morally, you just want to help a grieving mother.
Of course. But to understand why these companies are demanding a court order, we have to look at the legal doctrine of postmortem privacy.
Postmortem privacy, so privacy after you die.
Yes, and how tech giants engineer their liability shields around it. When you sign up for a social media account, you agree to a terms of service contract.
The thing nobody actually reads.
Right, exactly. But that contract is governed by vast data protection frameworks, like GDPR in Europe or the Data Protection Act in the UK.
Okay, so huge, sweeping laws.
Laws that are designed to protect data subjects from unauthorized access. The massive legal gray area is what happens when that data subject dies.
Wait, I'm stuck on something fundamental here, though.
Okay, what is it?
Jools was 14 years old. He was a minor living under his mother's roof. We are talking about a child.
Right.
How does a 14-year-old even have a legally binding, independent privacy contract with a multinational tech corporation? I mean, a contract that supersedes his own mother's authority.
That is the big question, isn't it?
In the physical world, parents have the legal right to search a child's room, read a physical diary left on a desk, or monitor their physical mail.
Absolutely they do.
So why does the digital world suddenly grant a minor this impenetrable legal fortress against their own parents?
That is the exact loophole that tech companies have exploited for the last decade. It all comes down to the legal age of digital consent.
The age of digital consent. What is that?
In many jurisdictions, including the U.S. under COPPA, that's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and similarly in the UK's data frameworks, the age where a company can legally collect and process data without explicit, verified parental consent is 13.
13. That's so young.
It is. But once a user turns 13, these platforms allow them to check a box agreeing to the terms of service.
And just like that, They're independent.
In the eyes of the corporate legal department, yes. That user is now considered an independent data subject.
So by checking a box that literally no 14-year-old actually reads, he is unknowingly signing a contract that legally severs his data from his parents.
Yes. From a legal standpoint, the tech company views Ellen not as Jools' mother, but as an unauthorized third party.
An unauthorized third party? That is so cold.
It is cold. They view her as someone attempting to access user X's private encrypted data. Think of it like a bank holding a safe deposit box.
Okay, a safe deposit box.
If you walk into a bank and say, hey, my son just passed away, I need to open his safe deposit box to see what's inside, the bank manager might feel profound human sympathy for you.
Sure, they're human.
But they physically and legally cannot just hand you the key. If they do, they violate the banking regulations they operate under.
Right, because there are strict rules about that.
Exactly. They breach the trust of every other customer holding a box, and they open themselves up to massive lawsuits. The tech companies view their servers as millions of digital safe deposit boxes.
Okay, I understand the mechanics of the bank analogy. I really do. But I have to completely reject its application here.
Why is that?
Because a safe deposit box holds physical items, right? Gold, cash, legal documents. We are talking about ones and zeros.
Digital data.
Data generated by a child using the internet connection paid for by his parents on a device likely purchased by his parents while living inside the parent's house.
That is a very valid point.
The bank analogy falls apart when you realize the parents essentially own the property the bank is operating inside of.
When you frame it like that, it does change the perspective entirely.
Is this law actually protecting the deceased child's privacy, or is it merely a bureaucratic shield? Because to me, it just looks like a massive corporate structure protecting itself from liability under the guise of noble user privacy.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it is absolutely a liability shield.
I knew it. It has to be.
And we have to look at the mechanics of what data extraction actually means for these companies. It is not just about protecting Jools' data.
What do you mean? Whose else's data is it?
Well, if Jools was participating in a challenge or messaging someone, there are other users involved.
Oh, right. The people on the other end of the message.
Exactly. There's the privacy of the people he was communicating with to consider. Furthermore, from a technical perspective, some of this data might be heavily encrypted.
Encrypted, meaning the company can't even see it.
Right. If a platform uses end-to-end encryption, the company itself claims they do not possess the cryptographic keys to read the messages.
So they couldn't hand over the plain text even if they wanted to.
Correct. But for the data they do store on your servers, like browsing history, algorithm interactions, and unencrypted direct messages, they require a court order because a subpoena provides them with legal immunity.
Ah, there is the magic word, immunity.
Yes. If a judge orders them to hand over the data, the company cannot be sued for breach of privacy. They are shifting the entirety of the legal risk onto the legal system.
Which means they're shifting the entirety of the burden onto the traumatized parents.
Yes, that's exactly what it means.
Ellen herself said, I want to know why my precious baby is no longer here. They should be helping bereaved parents.
But instead of help, she is getting a lesson in corporate risk management.
It makes me so angry. Let's look at exactly how these companies responded when the BBC came knocking for this article.
Yeah, let's break down the statements from TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram.
Okay, let's start with TikTok.
The BBC reported that TikTok has been in touch with Ellen and that a meeting was scheduled to happen, quote, on Friday.
So they were going to meet with her, but what did they say publicly?
Their public statement was highly calculated. They stated it wouldn't be appropriate to comment on the specifics before meeting with the mother.
Okay, that sounds respectful enough at first glance.
But in the very same breath, they provided this robust defense of their platform. They stated that they remove 99% of videos showing or promoting dangerous content before it is even reported by a user.
Here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, quite defensive.
Very defensive.
A mother is terrified her son died because of a dangerous challenge hosted on their app. And before they even sit down in a room with her, their PR department is pushing out a statistic saying, well, our algorithm catches 99% of the bad stuff.
Right, like they're already pleading their case.
Why include that statistic in a statement about a dead child unless you are terrified of the liability?
You include it to control the narrative. That's PR 101. We need to look at the mechanism of that 99% claim, though.
Yeah, how do they even get that number?
How does a tech giant moderate content at that scale? They use automated systems, computer vision algorithms, natural language processing, and hashing technology like photodNA.
So it's mostly robots doing the checking.
Yes. These algorithms scan uploads for visual similarities to known dangerous content, or they look for specific keywords associated with self-harm or risky challenges.
And if it finds something bad.
If it finds a match, it automatically removes it or flags it for a human moderator.
But the flaw in that mechanism is obvious, isn't it?
Oh, glaringly obvious.
Algorithms only know what they have been trained to recognize.
Right. They can't predict the future.
So if a completely new, incredibly dangerous challenge goes viral organically among 14-year-olds in a matter of hours, the algorithm doesn't have the training data to catch it until the damage is already done.
Exactly. The 99% statistic is a measure of how well they catch old problems, not new ones.
That is such an important distinction.
And by citing that number to the BBC, TikTok is essentially building a public defense strategy. They are saying, our systems are industry-leading, therefore we are not negligent.
It is just a legal posture wrapped in a PR statement.
That's exactly what it is.
Now let's move to Snapchat. How did they respond?
Their spokesperson offered a statement that begins with, our hearts go out to Mrs. Room and her family for the loss of Jools.
Okay, the standard PR empathy line.
Right. But then they immediately pivot to talking about the architecture of their app. They cite their, quote, extra protections for under 18s.
And what does that mean practically?
Well, they explicitly mention that they offer parental tools so parents can see who their teens are communicating with and report any concerns.
Oh, wow.
And then they drop the legal hammer. They say they can provide data access once we have followed legal steps to verify their identification.
The inclusion of the parental tools in that statement is, it's infuriating.
It is a masterclass in shifting responsibility.
It is insulting. It's like a company handing a grieving mother a fire extinguisher while she is standing in the ashes of a house that has already burned to the ground.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
They are pointing to a preventative tool that might have existed to implicitly suggest the parents had the power to monitor this all along.
Exactly. They're blaming the victim, essentially.
It completely ignores the reality of how teenagers use technology, and it does absolutely nothing to address the data they are currently withholding.
And we also have to talk about the underlying mechanism of these so-called parental tools.
Yeah, how do they actually work?
They usually require the teen to actively opt in or accept a link from the parent to link their accounts together.
Wait, really? So the kid has to agree to be monitored?
Yes. It is not a unilateral surveillance system the parent can just quietly install. It requires the teenager's cooperation.
Well, good luck getting a 14-year-old to agree to that.
Right. So Snapchat bringing this up retroactively is a way of saying, hey, we gave you the tools to monitor the physical edges of the puzzle. It is not our fault the center is missing.
That is just so incredibly cynical.
And then, of course, they hide behind the legal steps to verify their identification, which is really just a soft way of saying, bring us a subpoena.
Unbelievable. And then there's Instagram.
Yes, Instagram. The BBC reached out to them. Ellen Room reached out to them.
And what did they say?
The response has been total silence. They did not provide a comment at all.
Silence. I can't even fathom that. A 14-year-old user dies.
Yeah.
A mother begs for his data to understand why. A major news organization investigates, and a multi-billion-dollar corporation simply ignores the inquiry.
They just pretend it's not happening.
Think about the box you checked when you bought your teenager their first smartphone. Did you realize you were signing away your right to access their digital life if the worst happened?
Most parents have no idea.
Why is the burden of proof, the crushing legal expense, and the exhaustion of time placed entirely on the shoulders of traumatized parents?
It's a system designed to protect the platform, not the user.
Ellen is navigating coroners, funerals, and a grief so heavy it's hard to breathe. And society's answer is, well, now go hire a lawyer.
Navigate the complex high court system.
Right. Fight a multinational tech giant's legal department just to see the last messages your son sent.
The burden is on her because the law was written by lobbyists, not by parents.
Say that again. That is profound.
The law was written by lobbyists, not by parents. The tech industry has spent decades constructing legal frameworks that prioritize uninterrupted data flow and platform liability protection above all else.
Profit over people, essentially.
Exactly. And they operate globally, which introduces massive jurisdictional nightmares for someone like Ellen.
How so?
Well, if a parent in the UK wants data from a platform headquartered in California, they aren't just dealing with British law.
Oh, right, because the servers are in the U.S.
Yes. They are dealing with international data transfer agreements and U.S. privacy laws, like the Stored Communications Act.
What a nightmare.
The process of getting a court order in these cross-border situations can cost tens of thousands of pounds and take years.
Years.
Years. The system is designed to be so mechanically exhausting and prohibitively expensive that most people simply give up.
But Ellen Room is not giving up.
No, she is not.
And this is the pivot in the story. This is where it goes from an individual tragedy to a demand for systemic overhaul.
She's fighting back.
She has taken her unimaginable pain and turned it into a weapon against this bureaucracy. She told the BBC that it was simply wrong that she needed a court order.
And she's absolutely right.
She isn't just asking for a favor anymore. She's campaigning to change the law.
And she's making real waves. She has launched a formal parliamentary petition.
How does that work in the UK?
The mechanism of the UK petition system is actually quite powerful. Anyone can start a petition, right? But if it reaches 10,000 signatures, the government is legally required to respond.
Oh, wow, 10,000. That's a good threshold.
And if it reaches 100,000 signatures, the petition is almost always considered for a formal debate in Parliament.
So they have to actually stand up and talk about it on the floor.
Exactly. And Ellen's petition, which demands that parents be given access to deceased children's social media accounts by the providers directly, has surged past 120,000 signatures.
120,000. That is incredible.
Because it crossed that threshold, the BBC notes it will be debated in Parliament once a new government is elected.
Over 120,000 people looked at this broken mechanism and said, enough. This is wrong.
And she is acting as part of a wider collective, too. It's called Bereaved Parents for Online Safety.
So this isn't just an isolated mother screaming into the void anymore.
Not at all. It is an organized, powerful movement.
If we connect this to the bigger picture.
This is exactly how entrenched legal paradigms are broken. Abstract privacy laws remain in place until they intersect with an undeniable, highly publicized human tragedy.
Because the law looks logical on paper, right?
Right. But when applied to a dead 14-year-old and a grieving mother, its cruelty becomes indefensible.
You can't defend it anymore.
And Ellen is using every lever available to her to force the issue. The article details a very specific, aggressive legal threat she is holding over these companies right now.
Okay, what is the threat?
She said that if she cannot get the data voluntarily, she will call for a new inquest.
We talked earlier about the coroner's narrative verdict from the first inquest. Explain the mechanism of calling for a new inquest.
It's a major legal escalation.
And why is that such a massive threat to these platforms?
To get a new inquest in the UK, you generally have to apply to the High Court under the Coroners Act 1988.
Okay.
And you have to prove that new evidence has come to light or that the original inquest was somehow insufficient.
So she's going to argue that the data is the new evidence.
Yes. If Ellen successfully argues that the locked social media data represents critical new evidence regarding the how and why of Jools' death, the High Court could order a fresh investigation.
And if a new inquest is opened, the coroner possesses immense legal authority, correct?
Oh, absolute authority in this context. The coroner has statutory powers to summon witnesses and compel the production of evidence.
Wow.
If a new inquest is opened specifically to examine the digital footprint, the coroner can issue legal summons to TikTok, Snapchat, and Meta.
So they would no longer be dealing with a grieving mother asking for a favor.
Exactly. They would be facing the investigative power of the British state, demanding compliance.
That is brilliant.
Ellen is essentially threatening to weaponize the very legal system that tech companies are hiding behind.
She is saying, if you demand a court order to release this data, I will launch a judicial process that will force a judge to compel you to hand it over.
Yes. It is brilliant and it is brave.
But, you know, the fact that she has to engineer this massive legal maneuver while mourning her son, it's a profound indictment of our digital society.
It really is. It shouldn't be this hard.
Think about the invisible digital walls currently running right through the center of your own living room. We view ourselves as the ultimate protectors of our children.
Of course we do.
We lock the doors at night, we ask where they are going, we meet their friends. But the reality is, the moment they tap an app icon, they are entering a vast, unregulated city where we have absolutely no legal jurisdiction.
It's terrifying when you really think about it.
If the unthinkable happened in your home tomorrow, would you be prepared to go to war with the Silicon Valley legal department just to understand what happened in your child's final days?
Most people wouldn't even know where to start. We have built a society where physical property, A physical diary, a physical letter,
Yeah.
is easily accessible to next of kin.
Right. Nobody questions that.
But digital property is guarded as if it holds state secrets, regardless of the user's age. The law has simply failed to keep pace with the architecture of our daily lives.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed through an intensely heavy but vital story today.
We really have.
We started with the tragic sudden loss of Jools Sweeney, a 14-year-old boy whose final hours are trapped in the void of a narrative verdict.
A verdict that offered absolutely no closure.
We explored Ellen's desperate search for the why, a search blocked by terms of service designed to shield multinational tech companies from liability under the guise of postmortem privacy.
Which is just devastating.
We unpacked the hollow PR responses from platforms boasting about algorithms while withholding actual answers. And we witnessed the birth of a massive campaign backed by over 120,000 signatures, demanding that Parliament tear down the digital fortress keeping parents from their deceased children's data.
As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought that challenges the very foundation of the digital world we are building right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend our lives generating data, trusting our most intimate fears, joys, and communications to corporate servers.
We do, every single day.
And the law assumes that privacy is the highest ultimate good. But we must ask ourselves, when our physical lives come to an end, do our digital privacy rights continue to outlive us?
Wow.
And if they do, is it truly just to uphold those rights when the absolute cost of that privacy is denying the truth to the people who loved us the most?
That is a deeply uncomfortable question. But it is one we must face as families navigating this era.
We have to face it before it's too late.
Thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us on Soulful Scriptures every day for this heavy but vital exploration.
Thank you all so much for listening.
We pray for Ellen Room that her relentless fight brings her the peace and the answer she so fiercely deserves. We will be back with you soon for another deep dive into the stories that shape our world. Until then, hold your loved ones close, ask the hard questions, and take care of yourselves.